explain the different factors. But also now there's the application of your work. Where is your work going to go? Is it gallery sales? In a formal gallery? Is it part of a museum show? Okay. Now, if you want to make money out of a museum show, you're really in a lost stage here, because museums don't sell your work. Museum, you have to pay for your work to be in a museum. It's down to you to pay for the printing, the framing, the shipping, the insurance, the return.
You need a grant, basically.
Pardon me?
I said you need a grant, basically.
Yes, or be independently wealthy. I mean, we tried to establish that earlier on, and nobody stood, so we know we have a problem here. So, but is your print for decor? Now, this is a big thing, and I think Jerry and Scott would understand that very well. I don't think they're trying to sell their work or Scott's work to galleries. They're selling it for a decor stage, right? This is their business. And quite rightly. So that's an applicable pricing structure that only goes with decor. Decor is interior designers, hotels. It could be a great variety of applications. Museum show, no money for you. Okay? Gallery sell, 50% of the money for you on a good day. Okay? Decor, 100% for you. Does that sound to make sense here? Okay. Collectors. Collectors buy a lot of photography, but they only buy it because of you, your name, and particularly if you're about to die. Okay, so if you're on your deathbed, you're good to go. Commercial use. Don't forget the commercial use part of your work. There are many applicable commercial uses for your work. This is my realm. Art for commerce, we call it. But commercial use or commercial art is equally as important. That's advertising, stocks. Stock photography is still a big thing, okay? As long as you'd go with rights managed versus royalty free. Do you know the difference? Anybody does not know the difference? We need to explain that. Okay. Royalty free means you give your images to, say, Getty Images, which I call the evil empire, which most photographers will call the evil empire. And basically you give them the right to sell your work without royalties. Okay, so they put it in big categories, big collections, and if you're lucky, you'll get about $4 a year from your image. Another word that we try to avoid is called iStock. Ooh, terrible stuff.
iStock was bought by Getty.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think? Getty actually now sells decor images for next to nothing, because they sell royalty free, which means they make 95% of the money, and you get a check for $2. It's great, isn't it? You're going to go a long way. Most cameras cost $2, right, nowadays, right? Okay. Rights managed means that you keep the rights to your photography, to your images. The rights and usages are managed by the stock company, and you get most of the money. Well, unless you're with Getty, and then you only get now 20% of the money. It used to be 40%, but now it's only about 20% on average. So think about the commercial use. Think about multiple use. Don't think just gallery sales, but think all of those. Does that make sense? Now, all of these are going to have different price points because they're all going to different markets. They're going to different collectors. They're different buyers, different usages. Does that make sense so far? Stop me if you don't understand what I'm saying sometime, or if I go ahead of myself, or so on and so forth. All right. Limited editions and artist proofs. Why? Well, you can have one-off images. And I'll show you some examples. You can have limited editions, or you can have mass distribution. The last two categories here is a great point of contention between most artists. Should you sell limited editions of your work, or should you just print 1 million copies and see what happens? And it's two different philosophies here. Okay, so there's not to say one is right over the other. What I'm saying is limited editions will bring you more revenue because you tell people, I'm only going to sell 10 of those or 20 of those. Okay, a limited edition of 500 is no longer a limited edition. Okay, so I've seen some artists say, "Oh, limited to 1,000." Yeah, no, that's not a limited edition. It's a mass production. Okay, we're back to Walmart here. Limited editions normally anything between 5, 10, 20, 50. You know, I think about 50 it kind of gets a little dodgy. But it does mean that once you've printed those 20 images, you will not print them again. You will not sell them again in that size, in that edition. That is it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. What it does is increases the value of your work, right? So if you can only buy 20 BMWs of that particular model, it's going to cost a lot more than if you can buy 5 million of the same car. If that makes sense to you guys, right? You understand that supply-demand thing. Mass distribution is not always very good for art. Okay? It might be philosophically good because you distribute art to the masses, but it's not good for your pocketbook, and we're going back to if it's not good for your pocketbook, you're going to go out of business, and therefore you won't be able to produce any more art. That's kind of the philosophy I'm trying to say to people. Now, if you're a painter, everything you do is a one-off. Oh, wait. Painters bring their stuff to Scott and Jerry to make reproductions which can then be made hundreds of times. Limited edition. Well, until Scott runs out of canvas and chemicals to code them. So there is a big philosophical argument here, and it hasn't stopped, by the way. It is actually just raging out there. My philosophy is limited edition is better. I will print 10 of these images. You buy all 10 of them. That's it. It's finished. I have images that are sold out. I don't print them again. Nobody will buy them again. This is it. Does that make sense? So all I have to do is get out of bed and take more images. Well, Scott produces more abstract works.
So what would happen if let's say, like, you are the painter, the artist, and you have that original, and you also do the limited editions? Are you cheapening the value of the original, or? No, unless you sold the original first. Because if your client that's buying your original now finds out that you have 400 canvases of that particular image, they're probably going to have words with you. And they might not be kind. I just don't want to burst your bubble here. But generally speaking, yeah.
Size matters too, though.
Do what?
Size matters too. Like if you have an original that's like a 40 by 60.
No, only in photography.
No, with
You have to have a big lens and all that. Yeah, no.
paintings, if you have a painting that's a 40 by 60 and you do reproductions done, that you make them smaller.
Yes.
Like, and you do a limited edition of 10 or 20, then that's acceptable. And I feel like most buyers and collectors understand that goes kind of long. That kind of goes.
It is, and it again that's where there's a huge gray zone here, because the person that bought the original for 1.5 million might be very unhappy to see even a smaller reproduction of that painting on canvas, which looks like the painting, right? Looks like the original, has the same quality to it, going for $125.
It does happen. It happens with
It does with famous paintings, but generally speaking, that's a philosophical point of
Right.
problem. With most famous paintings, the original artist does not have an input into that part of it. We understand Van Gogh, he's dead.
Right. The Louvre and all that.
And Dali is no longer, and Monet just passed away yesterday. So there is some problem. But in modern art, a lot of modern artists, and Jerry and Scott know several very well-known painters here. And I don't want to venture into that sort of murky waters or shark-infested waters. Just to say that, think about it. Limited editions is where it's at. In my book, in my book only. Clyde Butcher would say that he regrets starting this limited edition gig.
Back in the days of traditional photography, some of the photographers would actually destroy the negative
Right.
Yes.
after their limited.
Well, let's take another example here. You all know Edward Weston, right?
Yep.
After the limited edition, though, is what he's saying.
Yes.
Let's just
Yes.
You know Edward Weston, right?
Right.
Well, his son now produces prints from his original negatives, 8x10 negatives. What's limited about that?
The negatives aren't going to last. The concept of the limited edition, as it was when
Right.
it was originally concepted, is that the first ones look really good, and then you get the wear and the tear.
Correct, yes. I mean, it's the same with printing. The plate will eventually wear out. The Weston family, on the other hand, have gone a little bit further here. They made copies of all the original negatives. So now what? So if you had a print of the famous peppers from Weston, by Weston, you can buy a similar print, almost exactly the same, from their family, not limited edition. So now we've got a problem here, don't we?
So that brings up whether certificates of authenticity are realistic or just a marketing tool.
Either way.
Both.
Again, either way. That's where you have this argument, is what do you do with it? That's a question of ethics and integrity. Okay, and that's left to you individually as to how ethical you are and what you want to do with your work. Okay? But my point of view is once an edition is finished, it's time for me to get my ass together to go and take more pictures.
Right.
Okay? That's my cue. Like,
Now,
hey.
if you have a Pepper's image, and let's say you make one in 8x10 and one in 16x20 and one in 20x24, are those all of the same edition, or are those different editions?
There should be different editions, but again,
Different sizes?
Yeah.
there's a lot of factors here that are going to affect the price. And when you start, the problem is you really want to get the price right when you start in the first place. What you do after that is down to you or to your successors. In talking about the Western example, you don't know what your kids are going to do when you're gone. You don't know what they're going to do. Europe. A lot of people in Europe will buy work to put it on their wall because they love the work. The American collector market is somewhat different, and I don't mean that in a condescending way or anything. The American collector is looking at the price value, has it just like stocks. Okay, it's a stock market kind of deal. Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Is the photographer 95 years old? Yeah, I'm going to buy that stuff because he's not going to last very long. It's a reality, okay? Or is the curator of the MoMA said suddenly that this is the best thing since sliced bread? So now Peter Leck's work goes for millions of dollars. So you have investment collectors and you have collectors that buy the work because they love the work. Okay, they love it for the uniqueness, for the non-cliche. They love it because it's just unique, because it's beautiful. So there's different kinds of collectors
They
out
still
there.
don't want the price to go down,
No, but if you charge $25 for your print, they'll love it, because then the price will most likely then go up, especially if they bump you off at the end of the day, you know, because they have teams out there. So what about distribution? How do you sell your work? Well, that's another good point here. Do you sell your work directly via your personal website? So you create a website and you sell your work directly via website. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, it's not the most successful way to go about it right now. It might work for some people. For 99% of the people, it will not. From a personal website. You can sell it direct via street art shows. This is how Clyde Butcher started, by the way. This is how Clyde and Nikki Butcher started down in South Florida, in the Florida market. Before that, they were in the California market, and they sold to a big retail store. Now, art shows is actually quite a good way of going about it. It's unpredictable, but it's a possibility. Direct sales. Direct sales is when you have a rep that goes around and sells your work directly to corporate customers and collectors and so on and so forth. And you can have a gallery, whether it's on ground or online. Mono galleries on ground, UPA galleries online. Also, you have an online version of your on ground gallery. So there's many different things. Okay, now you can just leave them behind, you know, on bus stations, but I wouldn't recommend that. Okay, so this is how you distribute your work. How else are you going to distribute it? I don't know. But basically, those are your avenues. That's going to affect your price, because if you have a gallery, you have overheads. You can't sell a print for $25 if it comes out of here or it comes out of UPA Gallery. There's no way, because our overheads are way bigger than that. Direct sales is okay, but you still have your production costs. And you have to pay somebody to sell it, or pay yourself to sell it, and you have to travel and you have to sell. Direct by street art shows, they cost money. You need a booth, you need to register, you need to pay the fees. Direct via personal site, once you have the site up, it doesn't cost you much, right? Which is why you have very little returns from a personal website, in my opinion. It's a soft sell. You know, you show the work and hope somebody's going to contact you. Doesn't work that way. Okay. It's like online dating. It's weird. Name recognition has a big thing to do with how you sell your work. And that depends on your career track. Okay, so you started photography last week versus you started photography 50 years ago. Now, you'd think that would make a difference. It doesn't. It depends how good you are. It depends back to where we started with the cliche and etc., etc., etc. So, but your career track, if you've had a lot of shows, a lot of exhibits, a lot of recognition, articles written about you, how beautiful you are and how you smell good and everything else, you know, then that's going to help you. So Sig Harvey, with the little self-portrait that we saw earlier, can sell work for much more money than, say, me. Or you, perhaps. Gallery representation is kind of the name of the game in fine art photography. If you're represented by well-known galleries, and you have to have some on the East Coast, and you have to have some on the West Coast, okay, because there's some weird dividing line somewhere in the Midwest. I don't know where that came from. But then you need representation in Europe, right? Europe is not Europe. It's France, it's Germany, it's Norway, it's Sweden, and Italy, and Spain. So in order to get gallery representation, that takes years. 10, 20, 30 years in a career track. And then, as we discussed earlier, the artist age. It's an unspoken thing in the art world, okay? But the more I talk to curators of galleries and museums, they basically want to know how old you are. Because if you're above 60 or 70, they're interested, because in 20 years, you're going to be feeding the worms.
That means you're not going to be making more pictures. You're not going to be making more paintings. The older you are, the higher the price. They won't tell you that to your face, but they will admit it to you eventually. So name recognition is important. So you have to work at it. You have to market yourself. You have to go into shows. You have to win prizes. You have to win awards. Okay? You have to be in the press. This person is doing good. Eric did this. Eric did that. Eric is 75 years old. Ooh, we want some of this stuff. Yeah. Eric had a motorbike accident. The gallery bought him a motorbike. Okay? Right? Well, I mean, it sounds like a joke, but it's not. Okay?
Any other professions, does it work out that your death is a good career strategy?
As an undertaker, you probably get it for free, I suppose, you know. I don't know. Rocket scientists? No, not so good. Politicians? Maybe. So, at the end of the day, this is all we need to do. Cost of doing business.